Hi friends, host Eric here, host Talking with Famous People. And in this video I want to talk about pissing me off before I had to go pick up my dad from the hospital. And specifically the issues that are being raised there in general. So foremost, there is the issue of in typology in general, the issue of, well, what are the basic tenets about which we all agree? The problem is there aren't any in the status quo, and my position has always been, well, not always, but has been since yeah occasion, whenever that was, that we should agree that my basic understanding of the mechanics and the architecture of the thing is correct. That there's some sort of prime directive that we can reduce everything to. There's four fields. There's four kinds of functions, but they represent three perspectives of attention: agent, object, subject. That there's two kinds of time: turn-based time and a real-time flow, and that there are two kinds of systems: dynamic and static. Uh, that the metaphysical and physical fields are might also be called communicative and experiential. Those kind of things that are fundamental elements of my understanding of how a proper cognitive function model works. So, oh, is somebody who, in some sense, is doing exactly what I was hoping somebody would do, which is going in and instead of doing what almost every intuitive wants to do, which is they don't want to work necessarily with anybody else's system. They want they want authorship, you know. They want to be like, no, I figured it out. I get that. And the fact that I'm claiming, well, no, I figured it out, is it's like annoying. I totally get that. It's like, what? That can't be right. We're all intuitives here. You can't be the one who figured it out. Um, it's either unfigureoutable in any meaningful sense, or it was figured out before you. In this instance, no. It's actually, I figured it out. So in that regard, I'm happy with oh. He's coming in and saying, all right, we're gonna, great, you've got first principles, and so we can build off of that and stuff. And then, you know, of course, he's coming in and he's suggesting, particularly that he the testing end of that it needs work. Not disputing the testing end of it needs work, in the sense that um, to the extent that we can meaningfully claim that it's much more rigorous than the big five, we're going to need to have real predictions being met. As I indicated in a live stream earlier tonight, I've got a plan to falsify, attempt to falsify, by producing a hypothesis regarding how two people, or at least one of them, is going to answer two kinds of tests to see if I can test the NI polar test. I already know these people are NI polar before I've tested them. You might say, how do you know though, Eric? Well, okay, fine, whatever. But I don't want to get into that. Regardless, the point is that you know, I'm very interested in testing out a lot of these ideas he has for trying to establish clear polar tests for all of the functions so that we can have something that's a lot more definitive in terms of typing people. Now, here's why I got frustrated. Well, first of all, he doesn't communicate very well from my perspective, which is to say, he's got terrible FE. In a he's uh, so it's like, because I'm TI tool function, I expect of myself that I not have any attachment to anything, and that I always be subject to critiques on merit-based grounds, which is great and fine. But um, it's also the case that I'm a human being, and so most people would be, in fact, somewhat defensive about this sort of thing, where this guy's coming in and saying, you're not doing a good job of testing this thing, Eric, and you could certainly do a better job. But the thing is, being TI tool means I typically don't allow myself to get bothered by that kind of thing. If he's right, he's right. However, um, I do get bothered by large claims that aren't substantiated or aren't substantiatable. And especially if you're talking about what he was making claims about at the end, which is number one, that I never had any business typing people because I couldn't be 100% about their type. I didn't have that down. So it was wrong of me, immoral or unethical in some way of me, to charge people to type them because I might not get it right. Keep in mind, this is from the guy who, since he's acknowledged that he's operating from my first principles and basic architecture and stuff, and agrees with me that that is the correct one, he's accusing me of this while concurrently tacitly acknowledging that until he started going crazy over this testing thing a week ago, I was not only the most qualified person to offer any professional kind of insight into typology, but literally the only qualified person. He has to agree with that, given the things he agrees to. So, in other words, if he agrees that he was happy to come across the correct architecture so that he could operationalize it into some sort of testing thing, then he has to agree, at least until a week ago, there was nothing wicked about me typing people, okay, because I was the best possible, most accurate type test you could get. Now, but more importantly than this, of course, I want to take exception to his notion that um, that that it's a good idea to frame behaviors like that through goal orientation, because this is where we really ran afoul of each other. He said, "Well, if your goal is meow, if your goal is meow, okay, you need to stop worrying about my goal. First of all, if you're talking about moral or ethical stuff, it doesn't involve goals at all, and if it does, it becomes utilitarian. So, in other words, something is justified or not justified by its goals. Well, that's not how I justify things, and I shouldn't, and nobody should, frankly, in terms of moral questions, anyway. So, but more importantly, I I really strongly discovered that I dislike somebody trying to force me into a TE frame of reference, saying, "Well, define your goals for me so I can tell you what the right thing to do is." My goals are not a good way to advise me, because my goal at that moment, as I indicated to him, was to shove his goal framework up his ass. And um, if you want to evaluate whether what I'm doing is successful, adequate, whatever, then be nuanced enough to evaluate it across multiple metrics. Uh, from if your goal is meow, if your goal is meow, if your goal is meow, is all one metric, no matter how many different goals you present. Now you can always frame something as a value, as a goal, if you wanted to frame it as such, but goals and values are different. So it's like, what values am I upholding? Well, when I'm doing a typing session, I'm upholding two values primarily. I'm upholding TI values and I'm upholding FE values. And what I mean by that is consciously, willfully, I'm trying to be both logical, not subject to people critiquing the objectivity of my interpretation of things, and I'm paying attention to whether or not the client's happy and their emotional state to some extent. Obviously, to successfully type them, I have to also allow my introverted intuition, my introverted sensing, everything I know from past experience, and everything I know about typology intellectually and abstractly to influence my decision making. But most importantly, um, I'm not the only one with a goal, or I'm not the only one with a value, or I'm not the only one with a reason. So the fact is, some people are willing to, want to, choose to pay me a very reasonable $100 for what's often more than an hour's worth of services. Now, I don't make quite that much as a debate coach, but I also don't guarantee my students are going to win as a debate coach. So, it's like when you're doing a service for somebody, what I'm providing for somebody in a typing service is, yes, it's their type, but I've also done all sorts of other individual consultations that aren't just typology. Regardless, what I'm trying to do is get to know the person and talk to them, talk with them, ask them questions, understand them, understand how they work, how they operate. And I don't want to take a regimented, uh, ordinated approach. I don't want to use your test in my typing sessions. I am happy to take good ideas from your test. But the notion that now that you've made your test, that I can't possibly type somebody without being wicked because I'm not able to offer them 100% certainty. Well, some of the time I am, and some of the time I'm not. He says, well, now you can 100% of the time. Well, no, I can't now 100% of the time because that remains to be seen. So I remember in the live stream as well, he said something about trust. I said, what did I ever say about trust? What I actually said about trust, I recalled, was I said, I trust my intuition more than I trust yours. And what I mean by that is my intuition is such that my relationship with it is to test it out thoroughly before bringing it out to play. And homie's strategy is the opposite. Bring it out to play as a means of testing it out thoroughly. But his claims are not in keeping with that. So the other thing I want to, so this segues into the last bit on this, which is obviously there's FI considerations for me. So if it is in fact the case that he suddenly leapfrogged me in capability as a typologist, and that in fact now I need to learn from him in order to successfully type people, then obviously that would sting on an FI grounds, right? So it's natural to think that I might be defensive about something like that. But what I would say more completely is this: if in fact we could structurally ordinate a test that could provide us 100% certainty about 100% of people and not involve a person actually administering the test to them, in other words, just a straight up test, well, to the extent that you can actually make concrete and sort of have these really defensible, repeatable physical links and stuff, then the thing ceases to become something that anybody needs to pay for. For example, nobody hires anybody to tell them how tall they are. Why not? Well, because it's very easy to tell yourself. You don't need any specialized tools or knowledge, right? So you might very well say, if in fact this guy's successful, he's going to kill your business model. In other words, if he's successful and puts together a test that gives people better results than talking to me for an hour, then he's rendered me obsolete and my approach obsolete. Well, if that happens, then I guess it would mean that people have accepted across the board a broad acceptance of my architecture, or it would mean that I've accepted, for good reasons, that after watching a couple of his typing sessions, that he is doing a better job than me. Even if that were the case, and it were to sting somewhat, I recognize the product I'm offering as being just that. It's a product I offer. I am offering to spend an hour at typing you, asking the kind of questions that you see. You have the ability to have your video published if you want. You don't have to have it published if you don't want to. I give it my earnest full attention, and I try to pay attention to you as a human being. I as a human being, try to pay attention to you as a human being, and glean understanding about you, and as in the process tell you what type you are. It's a complete thing, right? People do it for a variety of reasons. I don't know why they do it. I don't know why any given person does it. I mean, I'm saying some people may do it just because they want their type. Some people may want to just talk with me for an hour about typology, but they think this is a good way to do it. Some people may want verification of their type. Some people um, may want public, like a public stamp of yes, you are this type, and because they have a YouTube channel being that type. There's lots of reasons why people may want, or they just may want to talk to me, or whatever that is. I don't know. I don't presume to know what their goal is, and I think that's what I find so offensive about the way talked with me tonight in the live stream, is that everything he said presumed that he gets to know what my goal is and make determinations about things based on that. And I don't like that. I don't want any determinations made about things based on my goal. So we don't need to make any determinations about his test, my test, typology, anything at all about that the goals. We can just test it out according to its accuracy, whether it's correct, whether it's true, inherently, whether it makes the most intuitive and logical sense. Now, is it good to have empirics nail that down? If we nailed the intuitive structure, as I think I have, then what are we going to get? We're going to see that, in fact, you can put together this sort of test that you get. You can make predictions and get repeatable results and stuff. And I don't doubt that will put together eventually a better testing protocol than my current approach, provided your only metric is I guess, well, I don't know what his time frame. I don't know if he's operating the same time frame. So it's like, there are certain things I could sacrifice that would make for probably a more accurate typing session. I could sacrifice the quality of the video. I could spend a long time hammering something. It's boring for the viewers, boring for the test taker, boring for me, but better for the accuracy. Of course, remembering also that I charge $100 no matter how long I take. I'm obligated to take at least an hour, give them at least an hour of my time. I often take longer than that, but my time is valuable. It's probably for to say that somehow I'm being wrong of me to charge people $100 for an hour of my time is to express a great deal of contempt for the value of my time, frankly. Because that's what people are buying: an hour of my time and attention, and earnest attention, full attention, which is a very valuable thing. And so, look, you want to compete with me in typology? That's fine. Open up your own typology studio, whatever. If you want to show me in video, you want to start making videos and demonstrate to me. See, I'm more right. Fine, but the thing is, be careful with your claim making. Like, you've almost on several points here lost me before I had a chance to realize you were correct about something. And the reason is because I typically don't respect people who make wanton claims wildly, randomly, enough to listen to what they're saying very long. So, when you say your test is a failure, Eric, well, I mean, it does, and the reason it's a failure is because I can't guarantee people 100% that I know that there are types 100% or something. It's just, it makes me want to go, okay, how can you possibly be, how is it you came up with these pretty good ideas about how to do stuff, and also that incredible stupidity? It's like, I don't know how you do both, but he manages to. You've got to be careful about the claims you make. If you're saying this test proves you better have tested it a bunch, and don't, not 3 people, okay? Because you're coming back the next day and say, oh no, I've tested it on people. Okay. This approach that I've developed has been honed over the course of literally hundreds of hours of time spent typing people. That's where the concepts for how to type people, that's where I jettison the ones that don't work. You're presenting me a bunch of stuff that you should say, some of these ideas intuitively seem to me like they're going to be very useful in nailing down polar for the ones you don't have a clear polar test for yet. But when you're trying to come in and claim right off the bat that you've solved the problem or whatever, well, I mean, there's no possible way you could have done the requisite testing to check your intuition. That's what I mean by my intuition is more trustworthy than yours. Why do I know this? Because I at least am intuitive enough not to make those kind of claims until I'm sure of them. So, this guy's a mind fuck. I don't know what to make of him. Half time he's saying just shockingly effy polar shit. Just like he has no sense whatsoever of how shit's gonna play. Half time he's completely failing to communicate what he means to me, or understand, or hear, or listen to, or respond to my questions. And then the other 0.1% of the time, no, another half of the time, so there's 150%, okay? The other half of the time, he's surprising me with his strong understanding and good conceptual notions about how to type. I feel like I made a lot of progress understanding FI from him and NI. I think that his TE questions are it's just the same. It's just a fancied up version of my TE question. It's basically break something into make a plan. Break something into a set of ordinal steps of how to do something. He sets it up more as a story kind of setup, but it's basically the same concept. His SI stuff, same concept. It's just I do like the idea of reading aloud a short story and seeing if, in fact, SI Polar can't recall specific details from that story. That's an interesting thing to test. But again, it's an interesting idea that I'd like to test. If, in fact, it works well, then that would reduce the gameability of the SI Polar test. As it stands, somebody could come in with some made-up memories and game it. If you read them a story, they don't know what they're going to be read beforehand, and you ask them details from the story, then that is less gameable. So that's a good idea. But that's why it's a good idea. The most important thing is how you present this shit. You should come in and say, here's a way to execute your SI test, your SI concept, that's preferable to the way you're doing it now. And the reason it's preferable is because it's less gameable. Then our conversations would be so short. Instead, I ask you a question and it takes me 15 minutes to get you to answer it. And almost always, that means the person is just pulling shit out of their ass. They're just bullshitting. That's not the case with this guy. He's not just bullshitting. He does mean something. He's just utterly failing to convey the information to me until I pry it out of him because we just talk right past each other. I neither talk past him nor listen past him. He does the pasting, but that's not the point. Interesting guy, interesting situation. But, if you could get it organized into a single test, then that would be the end of typing people, which is fine. I don't plan on. I don't. That's the thing. I don't have any goals, right? I don't plan on anything. So we'll see what happens. Regardless, homie, you pissed me off today, and yet, FI Polar. No big deal. Whatever.